Stop trying to compare online. Most freelance grant writers don't publish their rates. Even if you wanted to get a baseline for what other freelance grant writers are charging, you will have a hard time finding published prices. To really understand the 3 different models of pricing, hourly, retainer, and packaging, check out this YouTube video. You'll want to be sure how you can break it down. But now today we're going to go into more information on actually how to figuring out the math. Hi, my name is Holly Rustick. I'm the CEO of the Freelance Grant Writer Academy and the Grant Professional Mentorship, and I have trained hundreds and hundreds of freelance grant writers to replace their full-time income on flexible hours writing grants from home and build up grant writing businesses. So let's talk about why freelance grant writers actually struggle with pricing, right? To really understand pricing and fees. So let's talk about a few of these. One thing is accurate data on pricing for freelance grant writers is actually difficult to come by. Published prices you might see online are usually outdated and don't take into consideration the 5 key factors that I'm going to talk about today, which significantly affect pricing. This makes it almost impossible to compare real prices for grant writing services unless you are a part of a freelance grant writing community where you're talking about real-time prices and shifts and pivots and all of the things. Deciding how much to charge clients for your work can bring up a slew of money trauma as well. This includes the very real struggles many of us face to value our own time and skills, and how you feel about charging nonprofits for your full services and value that you provide. Marketing your services requires that you sell yourself and your value. That means you have to get out of your comfort zone and promote yourself. This means being confident in your pricing can feel very high stakes. Through the Freelance Grant Writer Academy, I regularly coach new and experienced grant writers through different approaches of pricing their services. Here are a few steps we work through to come up with fair, value-based pricing. Step number 1, pick your grant writing pricing model. And as I mentioned, we did a very recent episode on breaking these down more, but I'm just going to recap these quickly for you. The 3 primary models for pricing your grant writing services are hourly pricing, and some grant writers prefer to price by the hour. This can be useful when you are new to grant writing, as you may not be sure how long it will take you to write a particular grant or complete a scope of work. However, your clients will still want an estimated time of how many hours it's going to take to finish an agreed upon project. Secondly, you could do package-based pricing. When you charge a package price, you are delivering a specific scope of work within a specific timeline. A package could include a grant, or it could include grant readiness, a nonprofit wellness audit, grant prospecting, that type of thing. However, one challenge with package pricing is that you will need a general sense of how many hours the agreed upon work will take for you to complete, even if you're not charging hourly. And the third model is retainer pricing. With retainer pricing, a client pays you a flat monthly fee. In exchange, you deliver a set number of deliverables or hours each month, are usually for a year or at least 6 months. Most of the grant writers I work with and that we coach love retainer pricing because it allows for you to work with fewer clients for a longer period of time and really get more results. Plus, you have more consistent cash flow projections compared to hourly or package pricing. So if you want the pros and cons of the different grant writing pricing models, definitely go over, and we have that on grantwritingandfunding.com. We have a guide that includes all of the pros and cons plus time estimates for different deliverables. Just head over to our full guide to start a freelance grant writing business. We have a full article there. All right, so step number 2, you need to work through my top 5 grant writing pricing tips. Be careful not to fall into the trap of just looking at other freelance grant writers to decide your pricing. Don't do that. Too many people make this mistake and end up undermining their own business. Instead of looking at published rates online, go through these 5 key considerations, each of which will directly affect how much you charge. Number 1, consider your experience as a grant writer. Your prior experience in grant writing will obviously affect how much you charge. If you are very experienced, you can obviously charge more than if you only have written a few grants normally. But even if you are new to grant writing, you can still charge for your work. You might think that you should first write your grants as a volunteer or an intern, but usually that's just a confidence issue. New grant writers who charge at least a nominal amount for their services are able to boost their confidence, get grant writing experience, get testimonials, and get their pricing and services ironed out. I'm all about being 100% behind your pricing, but sometimes pricing your services a little lower when starting out just feels more comfortable, which means you actually start doing more sales calls and marketing your services instead of staying anxious and silent on the sidelines. That is okay, right? To price a little lower when you start out. I'm fine with that. Once you gain experience, you are likely to increase your rates because your confidence goes up, because you're winning more grants, you're working with clients, you're getting experience, right? Inside the Freelance Grant Writer Academy, new grant writers love to use features in our program to back up their experience, right? For example, we offer unlimited grant reviews while inside the academy, and our coaches have decades of grant writing experience. So even if a student is super new to grant writing, in a sales call, they can say that every single grant that they write will be first reviewed by expert grant writers with decades of experience. They use the academy as their team. This is really, really good when they're starting out. This gives them and their clients more confidence. Number 2, freelance grant writers often have deflated prices when you're looking online. Many freelance grant writers I've trained and coached have deflated rates. They charge far less than their services are worth. And remember, we talked about in the beginning, you might charge a little bit less, but as you go up, they still don't increase their prices a lot of times. This is important to keep an eye on both for your mindset and if you're comparing your rates to the rates of that others are charging. According to our friends at the Global Development Solutions and their Grant Professional Pricing Survey report, many freelance grant writers aren't sure how to price their services, aren't confident in their pricings, and don't account for all of their hours worked. Surveys also show that 82% of freelance grant writers are female, and that females struggle with their pricing and continue to face pay disparity in the sector. Mindset and learning to value your time and work can be an especially difficult hurdle in pricing, and one we don't talk about enough, right? Many freelance grant writers transition into freelancing from the nonprofit sector, and they're used to being overworked and underpaid in their nonprofit jobs, and unintentionally bring those practices and that mindset into their freelance grant writing businesses. So if you're basing your rates on averaging what other freelance grant writers are charging without understanding how they arrived at those numbers, you increase the likelihood of undercharging for their services, because out of all likelihood, they may have somebody trauma, they may be coming from the nonprofit sector, they may not be looking at this properly as well. We don't know. So if you happen to find freelance grant writers who publish their prices on their websites, take a beat before comparing yourself. How do you know that those grant writers know how to price equitably? You don't, right? So number 3, stop trying to compare online. Most freelance grant writers don't publish their rates. Even if you wanted to get a baseline for what other freelance grant writers are charging, you will have a hard time finding published prices. Most freelance grant writers actually don't publish their rates and instead just ask client prospects to contact them. This is very normal, as many grant writers, 1, don't understand how to price, so they aren't confident in publishing their prices, or 2, they want to get a feel for the exact services organizations are looking for and then give them pricing. We're all about publish your rates if you want. We're fine with that. That can just actually vet some people from contacting you as well and get the right people to contact you. Number 4, different geographic areas equals different grant writing rates. A freelance grant writer living and serving clients in New York City versus El Paso will most likely charge quite different rates. The cost of living are very different between these two places, so your cost and what the market will bear will be different. A mistake I see is that newbie grant writers will just find an average grant writing rate online of something like $150 per hour and charge that rate even if they have no experience and live in a rural area. This will likely not get them clients very quickly because they're overpricing and the market knows it. On the flip side, if someone in New York City only charges $35 per hour, they might not be able to pay the rent, and the market might think they are very inexperienced if they're charging such a low rate and they don't have good quality. So you really have to understand your geographic area if you're pitching to your geographic area. Number 5, some grant writing services cost more. Not all freelance grant writers offer the same services or serve the same clients. For example, federal grants can take on average 100 hours to write, whereas foundation grants on average may only take 20 hours to write. So if you're a freelance grant writer who mainly writes federal grants, you might be charging $7 to $10K per month on your retainers. Conversely, if you are just basically writing foundation grants, you might be charging $1,500 to $3,000 a month for a retainer. It really depends on everything included in your scope of work, such as the number of grants you're writing, the types of grants you are writing, if you are doing funding prospect research, if you're doing monthly or weekly meetings, etc. So now that you heard the 5 different ways of looking at this, let's get to step number 3. Use our formula for value-based pricing. All of the elements that we've covered so far are part of the formula to figure out your pricing. We had the different models, right? Hourly, package, retainer, but you still have to figure out the method of your pricing. So now it's time to put it all together with a focus on value-based pricing. Here's our formula for value-based pricing. Track your time to understand your real cost. Add up all hard costs, office-based, computer, admin, etc. Get clear on your offers, i.e. the types of grants you write. Define a duration of time you will set for a retainer or a package, i.e. 3 months or 12 months, right? Know where your nonprofits are. Are they geographically focused or not? And do look at other professional services in your area, such as bookkeepers, lawyers, etc. Don't just look at grant writers. Look at other professional services that may have more seasoned approach to pricing. And take your own experience into consideration. One of my favorite things to do is to help grant writers get clear and confident on their pricing based on their services and value instead of grabbing some ambiguous price they find on someone else's website. I love doing this because that instills confidence and they get 100% behind their value. If you're interested in learning more about how to start your grant writing business, check out our Freelance Grant Writer Academy. Our program is one of the fastest and most reliable ways to learn how to replace your full-time income with part-time hours by writing grants from home. And we will help you overcome any trauma or money issues with pricing and get 100% behind the value that you offer.